Naomi, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Wishbeads podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure to be here. I love the Wishbeads.
You know, your enthusiasm for Wishbeads is so contagious that it actually was the thing that sparked what I would now consider a friendship and a mutual admiration society. So, but I'm really honored to have you on the podcast because I personally am so inspired by your story, by the work that you do with your nonprofit, the Advot project. And I would want to just sort of kick things off with just you giving a brief synopsis about how you, like what your journey was. I know this is sort of like in 2 words, in 2 sentences or less, but just briefly like ramp everybody up to what brought you here to starting this nonprofit and doing the work that you do.
Ooh, in like a few words, I got to do that.
No. It's a great story. So that's why I want you to share it.
I would start just by, I'll go backwards and forwards. I think that in order to understand the nonprofit is kind of knowing what the word Advot means. It means ripples in Hebrew. And I am a big believer of the ripple effect. You start one small action, you have no idea where it's going to lead to, which I think where it connects me a lot to the Wishbeads. You make a wish and our hope is that the wish will happen, right? But you don't know once you send it out into the world. And also sometimes a wish happens and you don't know what's going to happen after that. You wish for something, you get it, and then it's like, brrr. So creating and founding the Advot project was kind of a outcome of a lot of work that I was doing in the world, using theater as a tool to have a voice, to be a voice, to teach healthy relationships, to teach communication tools. And it started with a one-woman show that I have called Flowers Aren't Enough that deals with the issue of domestic violence. So I was in the world, literally around the world, doing this performance and understanding that besides using the medium of performance, that medium of acting and role-playing and doing exercises on how to be in relationship is a really great tool for non-actors to learn, for people to empower themselves, because we as actors, so much of our training is learning how to be, right? We're learning how maybe to be someone else, but we're learning how to be. And when you think about it, we all kind of need to learn how to be. So I was in the world I was a trained actor and an educator. I was always using the theater as a space to have a message and to say something, because I think we all should always take our space on this planet to say something. And those of us who are more vocal and exhibitionists can do it on stage or singing. And those of us who are quieter can do it through volunteering or whatever. But I always use theater as a tool. And then I had this one-woman show called Flowers Aren't Enough, and I was performing it. And through that show, I adapted this curriculum called Relationships 101. And I started implementing it in public schools. We started implementing it in private schools. And then I was asked to bring it into the LA County lockup facilities. And when we went into the lockup facilities, we really realized that youth that have grown up experiencing poverty, youth that have grown up experiencing violence, youth that have grown up without role models, actually their struggle to be is even bigger than people who have all of those things, because they've never gotten any tools. And when you grow up with a lack, then you're busy existing and not so much being. So the nonprofit, that was a long answer. The nonprofit kind of was born out of a desire to use the arts, particularly theater, because that's my art form, to teach communication skills and healthy relationships. And the goal is to create a ripple effect of change. And the change comes by being able to be a self-advocate. The change comes by being able to say what you need and what you want, and most important, what hurts you. And the change comes by just being who you are and loving it and saying there's good, there's bad, but I'm here and this is my voice. So That was a
Oh my
long
God.
answer.
No, it was a beautiful, beautiful answer. And I think for anybody listening or watching, it is so obvious why I am so inspired by you and the work that you're
Thank
doing and
you.
how important it is, to create these safe spaces where you can have hard conversations and also offer creative ways for people to access a different type of healing. And I think you and
Absolutely.
and I would love for you to even talk about this a bit more. Before we began, we were chatting about a few things, and one of the phrases that came out that I was making sure to bring up again in the course of the conversation is that healing is an act of creativity.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that sometimes the idea of healing means that we need to have the courage to look at the wound. And for so many people, that is so terrifying that they would rather numb that with alcohol or abusive behavior, denial, some kind of numbing agent. And what I so love and appreciate about what you do is that you create a different dynamic and create that space through your work, through your facilitators in spaces that are tough, and say, you can look at the wounds and allow the healing to be a creative expression, whatever that looks like.
And yes, and thank you. And excuse me, even more than that, not only can you look at the wounds, be proud of them. Because our wholeness is only as whole as our brokenness. And that this whole notion, and I think it's so prevalent also right now, of has and have nots, and this whole notion of privilege and not privilege, and shame of what I don't have or what I do have. Everybody has, right? Everybody has. We maybe don't have the money, maybe we don't have the opportunity, but we have a voice, we have capacity to get out there, we can advocate for ourselves. And what we try so desperately to do is give the tools to do that, and to understand that there's nothing to be ashamed of from where you came from, because you can only go forward always. And part of the issue with wounds is not only are we afraid to look at them, we're afraid to show them. Yeah. And I mean, that's also a lot on society. It's not only on the people who have to deal with their wounds. There's a lot of healing that has to happen. Absolutely. Collective, right? But really, and this notion that healing is creativity, I hear again and again, both from participants, from students, from people that I work with, I'm not creative, I can't do that. Everybody's creative. Yeah. Everybody's creative. Have you ever seen a kid that doesn't play? Every kid plays, right? Yeah. So this idea of what creativity needs to look like, or this idea that only artists, I can't be like you, you're an actress. Okay, number one, nobody wants you to be like me. That's like, one of me is more than enough. But what I'm inviting you to do is to try. Creativity is just trying a different path. Creativity is thinking of a different solution. Creativity is saying, okay, I've done this till now, hasn't really worked for me. What's the other option? And that's where creativity comes in. But so many of us are so afraid of creativity because it's unknown. And that's what we try to invite our students to try something else, try not carrying a gun, right? Try not using cuss words. Yeah. Try using an I sentence. Try letting go of being a victim. Yeah. Even though you have been, and that is valid. But try a different path, not because you're trying to please someone else. Try a different path because it's going to be better for you. And that's really the essence of what we try to teach our participants. Yeah. Would you mind sharing a story, whichever, I know you have so many, but a story that comes to mind that can illustrate some of the transformation that happens as a result of young people participating in your programs, that just sort of gives us a snapshot of the work that you do? Is there a story that comes to mind? I have one particular student who who actually was she was my first student, but I met her when she was 14, celebrated her 15th birthday with her. She was incarcerated, and she is now 21. And in the years that that I have known her, I've had the privilege to see her get out of incarceration, to see her graduate high school, to see her enroll to a community college, and to turn into this absolutely magnificent woman. And there are few parts of the story that I want to share. Number one, it was not just me or my organization. It has literally been a village of volunteers and mentors who have shepherded this young woman through the process, because you need a lot of shepherding to change. But number two, one of the really exciting moments for me was, sadly, in this time, her mom had passed away, and her living situation is that she lives with other people in the family, and there was a stepdad, he left, and she was fighting to get custody of her younger sister. And to hear how this young woman articulated herself in court to be able to get custody was a testament, not to our work, but a testament to her using the tools that she was given, using an I sentence. Because I don't create change. The people who I work with, they are the change makers, and it is hard work. What I do is give tools, and I'm saying, try these, see if they work. Maybe they will, maybe you won't like them. And what is amazing to me is every week I learn of a moment where a student will say, you know what, I used the I sentences, it worked. Or you know what, I decided not to respond and be angry and understand that it's about them and not me. It worked. Or they'll tell me something, remember when you said blah, blah, and I'm like, no, but thank you. And even something, and even now as we grow as an organization, we really try to, in a safe space, push our participants out of their comfort zone. And when you step out of your comfort zone, so many amazing things happen. And that's on our participants, that every week I see, we have one group now who at the end of this month, we have a Facebook event that I really encourage everybody to come to, because these kids are phenomenal. And it's called Listen, because our kind of tagline is listen, act, change. And one of the prompts was we gave the kids is listen. And they're like, listen what? I said, I don't know. Like, listen. What do you want people to listen to? And actually a different facilitator, one of my amazing team, which I love, she's like texting me, they're not doing the prompt. Like, they can't, it's so hard. I said, that's okay. It's supposed to be hard. Push them. They don't want to do it. I said, push them. When you guys come to our event, the opening number is because it took them a moment. And they had to think about it. But when they did, it is brilliant. And I hope that the technology will allow us to make it as beautiful as it can be. But the thing is that when space is created for people to thrive, they do. And I hear again and again, oh, you know what? He's never going to change. Or, you know what? She's been in and out of jail dozens of times. She's a drug addict. She is never going to change. Of course she's never going to change, because nobody believes in her. And she doesn't have to change. She just has to remember who she was, right? Yeah. So also how people look at change. When I think of this student of mine who stood in court and stood up for her sister, she didn't change. She just became. And that kind of connects back to what we were saying, that it's about who do we want to be? And, you know, you kind of started, I don't know if we started here, if we're starting before, about just how do we walk through life in our best selves, right? Yes. And if you've never been taught that, or if you've never been given the space to do that, and given is a very tricky word, because it's not our job to give or to let, because that's where that imbalance starts. But to guide people to understanding that you can be whatever. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. But it's really, I think it's really important to know that I see change all the time. So this particular woman just advocated so great, and she did get the custody of her sister. These participants of mine, when you hear what they say we should listen to, I'm like, whoa, people are going to listen to you now. And it was pushing and taking. So, you know, just, I am humbled again and again to be able to witness transformations. And I think also that Hollywood has spoiled us a little bit, that we watch these movies and in an hour and a half, people go from A to Z and you see transformation. And what I can tell you of doing this work for 20 years, transformation isn't that heroic, right? So transformation
doesn't sell tickets in the same way in real life.
Yeah, no. Transformation is, I don't do drugs anymore, but I still pay taxes and I got to get a job and I have a really crappy day and maybe I didn't hit all my goals. Transformation is that I am living a life that is what it should, what it could be, right? You know, we have people always say, so tell me what's the best transformation that you've seen? And I'm like, there isn't the best. It's staying out of jail, which
tiny miracles.
Yes. And they are, and we almost don't see them. And also transformation doesn't mean you're perpetually happy, right? Like I have so many students like, it's hard. I'm like, yeah. Life is hard.
But it's so beautiful that hardness is a sweetness that people can experience because they're living with clarity. They're living with accountability. And they're living with, when they put their head on that pillow, that they're knowing that they're doing their best, you know, or that they have the power to pick themselves up when they inevitably get knocked down, because everybody gets knocked down.
Yeah. I would also add one word that I think is really important to add to the equation, and that's possibility. I think that there's nothing more stifling than lack of possibility. And I think that one of the most exciting parts of the moment that we're living in time right now is that there is a demand for possibility, and that there is a demand not only for equality, of course we want equality, but equality of possibility, that we all should have the possibility to do this, to do that, to not be pulled over and you know, by and treated differently than someone else. And possibility is a really big word that we use a lot, because again, when you grow up without love, without care, without someone believing in you, you don't believe that there's possibility. And I think that the key to healing, also the key to creativity, there's possibility. You know, I remember as an acting student, I just remembered this all of a sudden. There was an exercise where I hated this exercise so much. I loved watching it.
But I love that you're like, you hated it, but you're talking about it right now.
Yeah, right. So it's an exercise where there was a piece of masking tape in the room, right? Two sides. And then two acting students would come up, and it was kind of like who could get focus, right? And so everybody, you know, stupid, silly. And it was only when you were desperate, right? Only when the desperation came and the acting student really used their creativity for something completely unexpected. That's when all of the focus went there, right? So, but having that space to play as actors, as creators, having that safe space in that little black studio, the acting studio that I went to in my 20s, was a space where you know that when you have possibility, you break boundaries. When you have possibility, creativity can go bananas. And I remember one particular exercise where there was just a newspaper on each side. So one of the actors was, you know, reading whatever. And then the other one, he did like this whole, like he took a whole sailboat ride on the piece of paper and took us into a new continent. And so that's, possibility for creativity. And that
anything goes.
Yeah.
I love that. And I also love that, I don't know if we've ever talked about, you know, we have this shared experience of theatrical training, which is even different. It's like, actually, there's one other layer, because in LA, there's a lot of actors who've never been theatrically trained.
Yes.
And what the world of theatrical training is a bunch of theater games. It's a bunch of what ifs. It's a bunch of play in the spaces that no one will see. And you need that freedom of expression and also community to really try on some things so that when it comes time to be cast in a role or perform in front of an audience, you have some muscle memory.
Yes. And it's really, and just to add to that, it's really interesting that Kathy Eldon from Creative Visions.
Yes, I love her.
Love her, colleague, mentor, beloved friend. When I first met her, she said, so basically what you're doing is you're giving kids a rehearsal space for life. Like you're coming in, you're acting out scenarios, and you're just letting them rehearse how to talk to the policeman, how to talk to the judge, how to talk to their parents. I'm like, well, not exactly, but it is, because I don't like the metaphor of life as a stage, because as someone who's spent a lot of time on stage, life is not a stage. Life is life. The stage is a stage. But I think that did not rub me. And I love her so much, and that was a whole deep philosophical conversation. But what I do know, where going back to your first question, where the birth of my organization of the Advot project was, and the birth of Listen, Act, Change, was in those many, many hours of actor training, and the realization that so many of those exercises that we did on building character, on learning character, on observation, are actually really good exercises for humans to practice to be in relationships, because acting is all about relationships.
Absolutely. And also, what do you want? What do you want? What's standing in your way? How are you going to go get what you want despite the obstacle? That's the tension.
That's right. What is your secret?
Yeah.
How are you playing with it? So for me, when I started, I mean, I always worked with teens, but when I started creating this curriculum, which is talking about being in relationships, or I always tell this is one of my favorite stories. I was in a lockup facility, an all boys lockup facility. And there was a particular day where two of the guys kept talking and talking. I don't know what they were talking about. And I was like, guys, come on. Like, we're in class. And he said, Miss, we're relationshiping. Stop it. Like we're relationshiping. We're doing, like, we're not fighting. We're not hitting each other. We're talking. We're doing it. Like, we're doing your class. Like, what's your problem? Right. But the
point taken.
Right. So the essence of relationshiping is being able to have conversations, saying what you want, saying what you need. And so many of those basic acting exercises are fun to do and help you learn those tools. And going back to Kathy Eldon, are a little bit of a rehearsal for how to be better. And also, again, going back to the population that we typically work with, everybody has a safe space. Most people, not everybody, have safe spaces to practice. But youth who have grown up experiencing poverty, youth who have grown up experiencing gang involvement, they don't have those experiences of safe spaces. And what reality teaches you when you are in the street or when you are gang involved, you very quickly have one dimension of survival. Yeah. And what we have, what I know to be true about my own children, so many dimensions. They can be mean to me today. They can be mad. They can talk back. They can cuddle in my bed. It's safe, like whatever, right? But when you grow up in other circumstances, you lack those dimensions of trying it out.
Something you mentioned earlier, in particular to the girl who had the ability to, in the moment that it really counted, to advocate for her sister, it reminded me of something. And I think it's very similar to this whole idea of life as a stage. And that is, I practice a form of karate called Isshinryu karate. And it's a pretty kind of intense form of karate. I started because my kids were taking karate. I really approved of the instructor. And when he opened up an adult class, I just thought, well, this will get me really out of my comfort zone. Because when I think about my own things that I value and the kinds of activities that I participate in, punching other people is not one of my main go-to things. But there was something in it that I thought, it's good for me to break the concepts that I have of myself and what I like and dislike. It's good for me to get out of my comfort zone and be a beginner again, and to get uncomfortable and feel silly and to try something new. And I resisted it in many ways, although I kept on going and I still go. In fact, I have a belt test coming up and it's been years. But what I learned was, and the way that he speaks about it, and he's, even though there's so many parts of my body that are like, this doesn't make, they're like, I won't need this. The reason why we practice in the dojo about fighting is, and all the basics that you do over and over again, and the katas that you do over and over again, and you refine them, is because you're putting them in your body so that you have them as muscle memory, so that they become a part of the way that you navigate the world. Not that you're looking for a fight, but somehow I saw how my dreams started to shift. And occasionally in my dreams, I would come across some kind of dangerous situation and I would use my karate. One time in real life, I was standing in line at the airport and it was packed, people queuing in line, waiting to go through security. And I'm standing talking to whoever I was with, I think my husband, and someone's bag was falling, like some roller bag with the handle, and was falling. And I didn't look, but I leaned back and I grabbed the bag. And the guy was like, how did you do that? And I was like, I don't know. And I realized in that moment that the years that I've dedicated to just showing up in the space, being a beginner, training my muscles, getting out of my comfort zone, and developing a new language with my body was actually because that muscle memory is strengthening me and growing me in a place, and I don't know when I'm going to need it. But I can tell you right now that if I had to defend myself, I do know how to defend myself. And I'm not intending that.
I'm happy this is virtual. I'm getting scared.
No, I know. I actually am kind of, but what I love about that girl is that all of that opportunity to be in your dojo, into your room that is creating these experiences, it's allowing people to give them the ability to get the energy of that, the imprint of that, the message of that into their nervous system, into their muscle memory, because they don't know when they're going to be showing up for a job interview. And they're able to talk about themselves with I, or talk about their feelings and intentions, or to be able to understand energy and the importance of being aware of your energy in a room. Because if your default energy is anger, guess what? Yeah. People don't want to hire angry people.
Yeah.
They don't.
I thought of two things. So I'm going to start with the second one and then go back to the first one. The second one was, I actually wrote about it in my Ripple Effect blog this week, that, sometimes you go back to your old ways because we're all human. And I had a student who told me that something happened, and she actually, it's a phrase, and I wrote about this in the blog, of taking flight in slang means to beat someone up. And, in my world, taking flight is, you took flight, you're amazing. But she took flight on someone who annoyed her, and she was not proud of it, although she did have, and this, I have to say, I love the honesty that my students share, and I learn from them to be more honest in my life, because once you take the mask off, there's a certain vulnerability that I have the privilege of being part of, and I would like to be as vulnerable as that they are sharing with me to the world. But, she says, I'm not going to lie, it felt really good to beat someone up. Like, he annoyed me. I haven't done that in a long time, right? And I got a little bit worried, and I'm like, okay, but nobody got in trouble. You're not back in, like, it ended okay. Let's leave it that way, right? And then a few days after my class, I was worried because, when you start a fight, they can come back. There can be retaliation. And when I called her after a few days to kind of see how she was doing, what she said to me is, it did feel good, but I thought about it, and actually I don't want to be that person anymore, and I'm going to help him. And it was someone who was like younger than her and a minor, and she took them to somewhere where they could get help. And so it's also,
Wow.
It's not, change is not linear. It's very kind of circular. So you can change, but sometimes you go down and then you go up, and it's a very circular, kind of circular existence of just moving forward, which I think is really important. And going back to what you said about this toolbox, you create this toolbox that it's like crutches sometimes. And it can be crutches, it can be wings. Once you have the toolbox, you can use it for whatever you want. You can, you could use it to fly, you can use it to walk, you can just use it to keep you company. And I think that's what's really important. And the student used it in court, and this other student realized, fighting maybe felt good, but it's not gonna move me forward. And just this understanding that, I thought about what you said when I have in a group opposed gang members, I tell them, okay, when you walk through the door, you're part of my gang. And none of that can happen here because we're together. And I mean, that's nice to say that. They don't always listen to me, but I try to create the dojo of relationships, of communication, and to live and to be like that. And, that's not easy.
Yeah. You mentioned also about possibility and how creativity, the spaces, the process opens us this idea of possibility. But the other thing that I think also, what I see in your work and what I would imagine that your students and participants gain is also a sense of accountability. That while there can be circumstances that seem like huge obstacles, unfair, unjust, there's no question, but that change must begin by the accountability and recognizing the power within, about the power of choice, even the choice to participate in your programs. That there's that awareness, even with the story that you just shared, this girl acknowledging that it felt good maybe in the moment to have that physical exertion and flex her muscles, so to speak, but then also learning the power of accountability to make a different choice and to see how that feels by going back and, let's say, helping this young person instead of beating them up. I don't know. I think there's a real power there.
There's a real power there. And again, we're also kind of going in like loops. The power of choice in possibility, and the power of choosing how to heal your wounds, right? You can choose to just, this is kind of gross. Like you can choose to pick the scab and to have your wound perpetually being with pus and hurting and bleeding. Yep. So many people who do that. And that doesn't take away that you by no means deserve that wound. Someone else made it and you have it, and it sucks that you have it. But what you do with the wound is a choice. Yeah. Getting the wound was not a choice. We are born into a life that we don't get to choose. Horrible things happen to us. They are part of our story. What we choose to do with it is where the possibility happens. And this, I can tell you, I see countless times. I see the ones who choose to continue to be victims, and exactly what I said, to just pick that scar, say, look. And that doesn't take away the fact that it is not your fault and you don't deserve it. But it does take away from saying, look, this happened to me. It's not going to define me. And going back to what we said in the beginning, I have this scar. This horrible thing happened, but I'm stronger than that. Or I can move forward. Or you know what? Because this happened to me, I'm stronger than you. Because this happened to me, That's kind of, once before, we always have presentations and we do events. And it's always this like really difficult place where I'm kind of like begging people, please come see the kids. There's something actually really freeing about this being virtual. So like, come, don't come, it's going to be recorded, whatever. Like, but I remember a few years ago, we were doing a big event and it was in a big space, and I was spending a lot of time preoccupied on selling tickets and getting people to come. And I remember vividly the moment where I was sitting in the theater watching the kids, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. I should not be running after people to buy tickets because they should be running after me, not to miss this. Like it was like this moment of clarity. This is so good. These kids are so good. And it was a change, and it was a shift in my own narrative of saying, please come to our program, literally shifting the language to, you do not want to miss this. And it was a very pivotal moment, I think, for me as a facilitator of change, and for my organization, where I'm always begging for money because we're always raising money and whatever, but what a privilege to see these kids on stage. And that's exactly that place to be, on the choice of what you do with your wounds. And that's what we really try to teach, that you have the choice that will give you possibility. And the key to that choice is how you communicate. Because if you don't use your words and communicate, nobody knows. And and this is why I love the Wishwork so much, because even who I am in this business, listening to you every morning, telling me to say out loud what I want. Oh yeah, that's right. I got to say it out loud for it to happen. I teach that, but Alexa's telling me, so I'm going to do it too now, right? So there's a synergy. There's a synergy of that,
for sure.
of asking and also making your own possibility happen. And that's another like very aligned place of, we make a wish and then what?
And then what? Say, we got to do something.
Right. So many listeners, I want to go to college. I'm like, they say, I want to go to college. I'm like, okay. And they're like, and what? I'm like, well, what do you need to do? And they're like, I don't know. I said, well, how about map it out? First of all, it might be a good idea to go to high school, right? If you want to go to college. So, that's kind of mapping that out also. Because again, when you grow up without, you want these big things, right? Well, there's a process to get there that also sometimes you need some help in mapping that out.
Definitely. Well, what I love about this is, and then, that we are so close to the time when you're actually, and the audience can meet and hear and take in the creative artistry of your students. So just know that, and all the show notes, anywhere that you're listening to this, you're watching this recording, you're going to have all the information you need so that you can log on and actually feel the energy of the moment when it's happening. While it is convenient to watch the recording, let's all make sure that we spread the word, that we are that bold audience sending good energy to these amazing kids, to this amazing organization. And be sure to check out the Advot project and donate and give your energy and contribution to these brave, amazing artists, including yourself, Naomi, but all of your facilitators who are showing up and doing the work, who are going into the places where these kids are having those tough, honest conversations, and helping that transformation, that healing, that light, that shepherding, as you so beautifully called. Let's all be part of that village, because it's an honor to do so. So thank you for sharing your story and sharing your energy.
And thank you for, just bringing the Wishbead process into our world, because we are all better for making wishes and for having our bracelets and for having you part of our ripple, because it really is about amplifying the message and collective wishing for the world is not going to become better if we don't make it that way. So that's kind of a collective effort. So thank you for having me, and thank you for the work that you do also. So.
Oh, thank you. I have a feeling we'll be collaborating more in the future.
Oh, for sure. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome.